Today, we are going to discuss this case of Speluncean explorers. This is a hypothetical case written by Lon and Fuller in order to discuss and debate on the various legal theories, very particularly legal positivism and the positivist school of thought. Now, let's understand what the facts of this case are and what the various judges in this case have mentioned.
The case of the Speculative Explorer is a famous fictional legal case written by Lon L. Fuller in 1949. It tells the story of 5 explorers trapped inside a cave after a landslide. With only limited food, they struggled to survive. On the 12th day, they managed to contact rescuers through a wireless radio and learned that help would take another 10 days to reach them. Medical experts warned they wouldn't survive that long without food. One of them, Roger Whitmore, suggested that they sacrifice one person so the rest could leave by throwing dice to choose who would die. But when the time came, Whitmore withdrew his consent. Still, the others went ahead, threw the dice, and Whitmore lost. He was killed and eaten on the 23rd day. 9 days later, the remaining 4 were rescued, only to be charged, tried, and sentenced to death for murder. Their trial sparked one of the most fascinating debates in legal philosophy about law, morality, and survival.
Okay, so coming to the important points for this particular case, the first thing being whether, so this was a no man's land, which means that the state of nature applies here. This was away from Newgate. So would the jurisdiction of Newgate's court apply, and would the laws of Newgate apply here? And secondly, and the most central issue being whether these 4 explorers who survived and reached a point of safety, would they be guilty for the murder of Roger Wetmore? Or was it some kind of self-defense where they had to use the last resort to make sure that they survive this particular trapped in a cave situation?
Chief Justice Truepenny, delivering his opinion, acknowledges the extreme tragedy of the case. He expresses deep sympathy for the explorers who were forced by circumstances beyond human control to sacrifice one life to save others. However, he maintains that as a judge, his duty is to apply the written law. The statute on murder is clear. Whoever deliberately takes the life of another must be punished by death. There is no exception in the law for necessity, sympathy, or extraordinary hardship. Truepenny stresses that it is not for the court to rewrite legislation or introduce moral exceptions. That responsibility lies with the lawmakers. Yet, he also points out that the system has a safeguard, the power of executive clemency. While the courts must affirm the conviction under the law, he openly recommends the chief executive to use his power to pardon the men, recognizing their unique predicament. Thus, Truepenny's verdict balances strict adherence to the law with appeals to mercy through executive pardon, showing his belief that law and morality must work together through separate institutions.
Good morning. Justice Foster argued they should not be punished, and he gave 3 key reasons. First, he said that when trapped underground, the explorers were in a state of nature, outside civil society. Since ordinary law did not apply there, their actions were governed by natural law, and their agreement to sacrifice one life for 4 was not murder under Newgate's statutes. Second, he argued that even if the statute applied, it should be read according to its purpose, not its literal wording. The purpose of punishing murder is deterrence, but in these extraordinary circumstances, no deterrent effect was possible. Executing the survivors would serve no rational purpose. Third, Foster stressed that judges must interpret law intelligently. That means correcting legislative gaps and applying the law in a way that fulfills its true intent, rather than sticking blindly to the letter of the statute. In conclusion, Justice Foster's opinion reflects a purposive and moral approach to law, reminding us that justice is not only about rules on paper, but also about context, reason, and humanity. Thank you.
my focus on Justice Handy's opinion in the Explorers case, what stand out is practical, common sense and approach to justice. Unlike some of the other judges who were deeply tied to the abstract legal theories, Handy was more interested in how real people would see the case. He emphasized that law should not be applied in a vacuum but in a light of public opinion and practical wisdom. He even pointed out that almost 90% of the public supported showing mercy to the explorers, and he believed the court should respect that sentiment to maintain public trust. Instead of rigidly enforcing the death penalty, Handy favored what he called a token of punishment or even release, which should reflect the community's values while still recognizing the seriousness of the act. To justify this outcome, he leaned on Justice Foster's purposive interpretation of law, arguing that law's purpose, protecting life, would not be served by executing men who kill only to survive. So in short, Justice Handy represents a pragmatic and democratic vision of justice, one that balances legal reasoning with common sense, public confidence and the moral intuition of society.
Good evening. Today I will be speaking about Justice Keen's opinion in the case of Speluncean explorers. Unlike Justice Foster, who focused on morality and purpose, Keen took a strict legal positivist approach, emphasizing the role of judges as enforcers of law, not moral philosophers. His reasoning can be understood in 3 points. Namely, the first point talks about Keen argued that the judge's only duty was to apply the law as written. The Statute of Neustadt clearly said that anyone who willfully takes the life of another must be executed. Since the explorers admitted to killing Wetmore, the judges had no choice but to convict them. In the second point, he firmly rejected the idea of considering morality in legal interpretation. For Keen, personal feelings about sympathy or justice were irrelevant. He believed that allowing judges to insert their own moral views would undermine the certainty and stability of law. In the third point, Keen stressed about the importance of separation of powers. He said it was not the judiciary's role to alter laws or grant mercy. If there was a room for compassion, that was a matter for the executive through clearly clemency or pardon, not for the courts. In conclusion, Justice Keen's opinion represents a strict positivist view of law. He reminds us that judges are bound by statutes, not personal conscience, and that legal certainty sometimes requires harsh treatments and results. Thank you.
Hi, hello, I'm Justice Tatting. I face this case with a divided heart. I feel deep sympathy for these explorers who suffered so terribly. Yet I cannot ignore those who choose to take a man's life by casting oaths. Justice Foster says that we're outside the law in a state of nature. But I cannot agree. Our law does not vanish simply because men are trapped in hardship. He also argues that necessity excuses their act. But if hunger justifies killing, where do we draw the line? In our courts, even stealing bread to survive has never been excused. How then can we excuse murder? And yet, to condemn them under the letter of law, I feel unbearably harsh. My reason says one thing and my conscience says another. So I find myself torn, unable to choose between justice and mercy. And so, with regret, I must step aside so I rescue myself from this case.
Now that you're aware of what judge mentioned what case and what argument, you can comment under the comment section which justice you very well rely with and what agreements you have with them.